All right, welcome back, everybody. We are finally back almost a month later with the 626 Productions podcast. And I don't know if we want to put an actual name on it yet, um, but we're back. College football has wrapped up. Ohio State is our national champions. Pat, what do you think? How was the college football season for you?
It was a great season like we talked about in our previous episodes. We were never sort of wanting for excitement or anything like that. I think especially most of the big games, I won't say all, but most of the big games delivered. You look at all the moments that games like Georgia, Alabama gave us, Georgia, Texas, the first time gave us the kids throwing the water bottles on the field, all that type of stuff. And to cap it off with a national title game that didn't start off exciting, but certainly ended that way, I think was the perfect way to finish up such a good year for college football.
Yeah, I think that, you know, do we want to go as far to say this was an '07 year, like now that we're at the end? It's right there. I think
Mm.
'07 still has this one beat, but all in all, expanded playoff was great for college football. The season itself was amazing. Um, Biggest winners this year, obviously Ohio State winning the national title, but you know they're already talking about changing the playoff bracket. Ohio State's got to be amped anytime we talk about a playoff bracket changing. They win it, so the Buckeyes got to be happy about that going forward as well. But yeah, what a great season all the way around. Lots of surprises along the way. The upsets. The first round of the playoff, people were a little bit worried about. Lots of blowouts and the score being different, but surprisingly enough, the first round of the playoff, which is just about the same size as the NFL, had a
Mm.
closer point differential than professional football. So I don't think that's something that gets talked about enough. That's something I wanted to bring up really quickly. But as we got deeper into the playoffs, games got just that much better. But it was very clear Ohio State deserved to be the playoff national champions.
Yeah, definitely. I know we might have had a little bit of egg on our face because when we did our original playoff preview and playoff predictions, both of us were kind of a little
Oh yeah,
skeptical of Ohio State there. I think I had them beating Tennessee, but I thought that game was going to be really close, and they definitely proved us wrong and proved a lot of people outside that area and outside that program wrong by getting things right really quickly after that Michigan game, and just showing what a dominant team they can be.
yeah. No, I mean I had the whole carton on my face. I checked them out immediately. I saw that they made the playoff, and I was like, Tennessee's going to kill them. Ryan Day is going to be fired. It was over for me for Ohio State at the Michigan game, but they came into the playoff. They took those couple weeks of practice very seriously and got the momentum they needed, beating the Volunteers, and then went down to Pasadena, got the job done against Oregon, and it was really all done from there. Oregon, I was my national champion going into this, and Oregon wasn't even on the field with them, and I think that's all Ohio State needed to really get the momentum to go through the semifinal and then finally the national championship. Which leads me to we didn't get a chance to talk about the semifinal for the predictions, but we'll go into the first game: Penn State, Notre Dame. Um, had we seen this matchup beforehand, I think we talked about this. Penn State, on my book at least, didn't expect it to make it that far, but once they got going, looked like they had the potential for it. Notre Dame, obviously, after the Northern Illinois game, got better week in, week out. And then these two teams matched up, and they had a pretty good matchup there. What was your outlook, especially as an Irish faithful in the
Yeah,
semifinal?
so I thought that was a great game. Really back and forth throughout the game. At points early in the first half, it kind of looked like Penn State was really in control and really dominating that game. Um, I mean, you think right before halftime, it was 10-0, but it felt so much um, of a bigger deficit than 10-0 if you're watching that game. And then, Riley Leonard gets banged up on that drive. Steve Angeli has to come in. He does a heck of a job getting them down the field, getting 3 points, building a little bit of momentum for the Irish. And then they just come out, and that defense starts asserting itself a lot more physically, playing dominantly down the stretch in the second half there. And Jaden Greathouse had a heck of a game. He burned 2 Penn State defensive backs on that one post route touchdown that really, really put the Irish in business. So I think that's everything you could want in a playoff game. And I think even as a neutral fan, you walk away from that one really, really happy and really impressed with the display of competition that you just saw.
Yeah, I think as a neutral for myself in that game, that was the best game of the playoffs. It was entertaining, in my opinion, from start to finish, and the ending was just about as good of an ending as you get for football from an entertainment standpoint.
Mm.
And I mean, the quality of football was there from the first snap to the last snap. That was just overall a great game down there in the Orange Bowl. Penn State, can't be mad with how their season went on. They played a very good Notre Dame team at the end of the season. And, as we got into the playoffs, that was a team I was like, okay, Oregon's out. Notre Dame was already my dark horse. I was like, this is looking like them. So both teams, obviously Notre Dame got the better hand of the semifinal. Penn State cannot be upset. They look to be in a decent situation going into next season. I would expect them to make the playoffs once again. But, they have some key losses, so I don't know if they'll be able to be in as good a situation next year as they were this year.
Yeah, losing Abdul Carter really hurts them, but having both their running backs coming back, plus I think Drew Aller's coming back, that kind of helps keep things together a little bit. Plus, you never know. They just poached Ohio State's defensive coordinator, so maybe that makes up for the loss of Abdul Carter a little bit.
Yeah, Aller coming back would be massive for them. Last I had seen, that was still up in the air. But if Aller is able to come back, that answers a lot of questions for the offense. So that obviously would strengthen Penn State's momentum going into next season. So we'll move on to the Cotton Bowl now. Texas, Ohio State. I'm going to lead this off with a question before we get into the game. The actual game analysis.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think this would have been a tougher matchup for Ohio State had Arizona State actually done it in overtime?
Oof. I don't know. I'm gonna say no, and I'm only gonna say no because I think that Texas defense and their strong defensive line play holds up better against Ohio State and their physical O line than Arizona State would. I'm not saying that it would have been like a complete blowout or bloodbath, excuse me, anything like that, but I do think Texas was better suited for the physicality of that game.
Yeah, and obviously the final score of that game, 28-14, it looks a little bit further apart than it actually was, thanks to that defensive score late in the game. But yeah, I mean, I think Arizona State in the quarterfinal, the deserved to win a meter was almost certainly on their side. I mean, 2 doinks at the end of the game. Arizona State just had the momentum, just for one reason or another, could not get it done. Texas got through, which, in the regular playoff season, that's what you need to win the national championship. But in our new expanded playoff, you need a lot more than just that.
Yeah.
You need more than just, getting through a doink. You need a lot a lot extra ball bounces. So that being said, I mean, I'm with you. I think Texas's physicality would have been better against Ohio State than Arizona State. I think Arizona State would have brought a little bit more finesse to that game that Ohio State may have had to deal with. But all in all, I think regardless of who won that quarterfinal game, Ohio State was just on a different level than everyone
Mm-hmm.
else in this playoff. You know, for as good as, say Georgia was in some of their SEC play, for as good as Notre Dame was in their big matchups, Ohio State was just another step above what everyone was doing. So even though Texas was coming in pretty strong, Ohio State just had the next step against them, the next play. They were already ready for it. So regardless, I think Ohio State was going through there. It once again, just impressive considering I wrote them off entirely from that Michigan game. I never considered them to even
Mm.
get past the first round, and then it very quickly became who's even going to be able to match up with Ohio State.
Yeah, yeah. Especially once that offense got clicking again, and you have so many options in the passing game with Igbuka, Smith, Carnell Tate, plus the two-headed monster of Trey Henderson and Quinshawn Judkins. Once that offense clicked, Ohio State became really, really scary. And like you said, one of those teams where you're just like, man, who can really like match up and maybe not stop them, but at least slow them down enough to get a win.
Yeah, 100%. And looking forward to next season, we talked about Penn State in this situation. I think Ohio State has got to be bound for at least a semifinal appearance based on everyone they're getting back from this past season. Because, you know, also just being there, even if you weren't a starter, being there, knowing what it feels like, knowing how to prepare, knowing what it is to win,
Mm-hmm.
that does a lot for a team. Even if you're not like that main guy starting, that does a lot for experience. So we'll hop into the national championship now, the college football playoff final. As a Notre Dame faithful, what are your thoughts? You don't have to be professional about this one. Just go ahead and give me your raw thoughts as a Notre Dame fan.
Yeah, I mean it was tough. It was tough. It was definitely a roller coaster of emotions. That first drive, I I got way too confident. I was like, oh man, I mean, yeah, it took 14 plays, 18 plays, whatever it was. But I was like, we look great, physical, getting that push on the Ohio State's defensive line. Like, we could really take control of this game. And then for whatever reason, whether it was play calling by our coaching staff or whether it was Riley not being 100%, Jeremiah Love not being 100%, there was just no rhythm in the first half after that first drive. And I mean, like we just talked about with Ohio State being so good and so talented offensively, if you're consistently putting your defense out there quickly, 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 and they're not getting time to rest, it becomes really, really hard to stop that team. But I was really impressed with, and I was really proud of the fight that Notre Dame showed in the second half, particularly in the fourth quarter, coming back, making it a one possession game, and you know I'm probably going to relive that. Pretty much, it was just a go route. That pass to Jeremiah Smith from Will Howard on third down for some years, but
Yeah.
that's college football, man. You just got to tip your hat to Ohio State, to Chip Kelly, to Ryan Day. for a heck of a game plan and for really having that team humming, especially in the first half. But I don't know. I'm excited for the future. I think Marcus Freeman has that program in a really great position. And I think Notre Dame's finally proven that they deserve to be back in that top upper echelon of college football. They made 2 playoffs under Brian Kelly, but both those games were never really competitive. And then obviously we know what happened in the national championship against Alabama. We don't need to go down that route, but it was nice for the first time in my lifetime seeing Notre Dame show up in a big bowl game, win a big bowl game, and prove to a lot of people that Notre Dame football isn't just a thing of the past and hopefully is going to be in the conversation for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I mean, I think there at the end you hit it on the head for I think most neutrals. Um, going back, that Judkins basically go route was just a masterful play call on, I'm assuming, Chip Kelly's part. He had not touched the ball the entire second half. And, you're just sitting there, you're looking for a third down, you're looking for something at the sticks or maybe a couple yards past. And to throw a deep ball in that one-on-one was an incredible call. Will Howard made a great throw, Judkins being there. And that was kind of the whole playoffs for Ohio State, I feel like, summed up in one play where, you needed that play call, you needed that execution, and you got it. Didn't have to worry about it. It was there. And, it was, on the Buckeyes' part, pretty incredible. Going back to Notre Dame, 100% with you. A couple years ago, when Brian Kelly left for LSU and they hired Marcus Freeman, I thought that it was a bit of a cop-out hire. I did not think that that was a Notre Dame caliber head coach. And Marcus Freeman has completely turned it around. I was like, he's unproven, only been a coordinator. Notre Dame needs a proven guy who's been a head coach before. He's shut me up this year. Completely shut me up this year. He looks amazing. He's got his guys playing physical football. Obviously, I feel like I'm going to be saying this for the next 2-3 years. How did Notre Dame lose to Northern Illinois? It's very Michigan versus App State-esque. Notre Dame's playing as physical football as Notre Dame has ever been playing in my lifetime. I see them line up against anyone in the country, and I'm like, they're not going to get pushed back. Like, they got it. That was the biggest thing against the Alabama team a couple years ago, was they just weren't as physical. You had Manti Te'o playing 3 positions on the defense, and that was it.
Yeah.
So now, Notre Dame looks like they are here to compete in, 2025 and advance. What they have for next season, I'm not fully sure. But I do think that they'll be able to compete, and they can put themselves in a position to be in that conversation for next year. And Marcus Freeman is going to have that team ready to play every week. Northern Illinois, as we get further away from it, was clearly just a fluke. And it wasn't actually what Notre Dame is going forward. That being said, Brian Kelly, he makes too much money for what he does. I got to say it, because he's had good Notre Dame teams who he can't finish with. He had arguably one of the best LSU teams that he could have almost inherited.
Yeah, from a talent perspective, for sure.
And got 8 wins with them, with the Heisman Trophy winner, 2 first-round receivers, and the defense, wasn't the best, but also got to be putting 50 points up with those guys. So Brian Kelly has to be on an even hotter seat than he already is down in Baton Rouge. That's the biggest takeaway I've gotten from the past 2 years. It's gotten hotter and hotter from nothing that he's done there, but just stuff that's happened around the country.
Yeah.
So I have to put that out there into the internet.
Yeah, and I mean, as someone who's followed Notre Dame football for my entire life, I never really understood why LSU went for Brian Kelly. It never really seemed like a logical hire or a logical fit, especially when you look at his biggest problem with Notre Dame is winning those or was winning those big games. Um, and that's just carried over again into his LSU tenure. They just always seem to be one or two games or one or two wins away from truly being a competitive force. And I agree. I think he's definitely got to get at least 10 wins this upcoming year and sneak himself into the playoffs to save his job.
Yeah, I mean, he's like we said, he's got to be on a hot seat going into this upcoming season. But if you're LSU, where do you go from there? Is that do you go Barry Odom, go old school SEC, bring him back after his tenure at Missouri? I feel like LSU's got to be a little bit handcuffed, even though you've got to be less than thrilled with what he's done down there.
Yeah, but I think the thing that helps LSU is it's still that marquee brand and that marquee name, kids still want to play, recruits still want to play for LSU. It's still a name that holds some weight. So I think, especially with their money that they'd probably be able to cough up, I think they could get a decent a decent head coach in there who'd be willing to maybe step down from another P5 job to move to a position like LSU. Because you think about the resources that you have as head coach there, especially in the NIL era. Um, you're putting yourself in a good position, but you definitely have to be able to take the pressure and be ready for questions if you're not immediately succeeding.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, NIL era has been insane. It's only continued to evolve year by year. You see, potential salary cap coming in this upcoming season. Clemson all of a sudden is using the portal, brand new. Um, you know, it's an ever evolving thing, and what you do yesterday does not necessarily mean success for tomorrow.
Mm.
It's quite a crazy dynamic to be in, and now essentially a minor league of professional sports. You look at the Big Ten and the SEC in the past and go, yeah, those are almost minor leagues to the NFL. Like that competition level is so high, so good every season. Now with the paying of players, like, anyone, there some of these college kids are getting paid better than UFL players.
Yeah.
So it's quite crazy to think about it on the day in, day out. Well, one final question for us today. We did not prepare this at all. Your semifinal for next year. We will talk about our playoff predictions again later in the summer. But right now, no research, full feelings. Are only our semifinal predictions for next season.
Oh man. All right, I'm gonna say Ohio State against Georgia, and I'm gonna say Notre Dame against Oregon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ohio State, Georgia, I think that's pretty good. I've seen a lot of stuff lately as well that is indicating not necessarily that matchup, but those two teams making it that far. I have to agree on those teams. Of the matchups, wow, I would almost say, and obviously Drew Aller, hearing that news changes this a bit. I'm going to say Penn State versus Ohio State. Penn State being the higher seed.
Okay.
Got to go Georgia in there. I don't know where they're going to fall seeding wise. They're almost bound for a loss somewhere, especially early in the season. Gunnar Stockton being the guy.
Yeah,
I feel like he's going to take, you know, an early loss in the season. But that team behind him there, Georgia, is going to be pretty stout. Man, that fourth team. It's my own question. I came up with this. And if this doesn't prove that we came up with this on the fly, I don't know what would. Yeah, I mean, you got to expect Oregon, especially with how good they were this past season, rather. You got to expect that they would have something good on the field. But also, there's a number of other teams. I feel like I got to go Oregon here.
Okay.
I think Oregon will be my official answer. So Penn State, Ohio State versus Georgia, or Penn State versus Ohio State, and then Georgia versus Oregon. That is my semifinal. Although I will say, part of me with Oregon, and I guess this is me being partly homer, partly hater. I'm going the whole state of South Carolina as a potential substitute for Oregon.
Okay.
Clemson or South Carolina, I think, could be in that talk. But both of those it's one of those things where they're either all or nothing.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm a little scared. If you look at a lot of these preseason, way too early, blah blah blah, whatever you want to call them, rankings. South Carolina's right there, either sniffing around the top 10 or comfortably in the top 10.
Yeah, it's completely surprising to
I'm
me.
a little nervous about that. I'm not gonna lie. It would be.
I've seen them as high as 8.
Yeah,
and that makes me a little worried. But also, I mean, they have the capability to be that high.
Definitely.
And I'm not going to sit here and go national title season or bust for the Gamecocks. I'm not going to do that. If the stars align, absolutely could be a semifinal team. I could easily see them missing the playoffs.
Yeah.
Both could easily happen in my scope. And same for the Tigers. I think that, based on the ACC this upcoming season, they could easily win it and be a top 4 seed. I don't think they'll have the issues that they did with the rankings this upcoming season, or past season again, rather. I think they would be a 3 or a 4 seed and get a win or two in the playoffs, and that be that. But also, I could see them, losing a game or two that they weren't expecting, losing some toss-up matchups, and next thing you know, they're out of the playoff and they're not even winning the ACC title. So, both programs, I think, have really high ceilings and pretty moderate floors.
Yeah.
And looking around the scope of college football, it's like no one has the range that those two teams from South Carolina do. Some might have higher highs than them, but going from as high as they could potentially be to as low as they could potentially be, it's not as drastic, which then leads me to go, well, maybe that's where they end up. We have another crazy season like this past season. Next thing you know, maybe we beat 07.
Yeah.
We know ESPN wouldn't be mad.
Certainly not.
and the neutrals wouldn't be mad either. So hey, fingers crossed. I gotta applaud this past season. Great season of college football. I don't think anyone, when they finally remove their own team's results from the season, I don't think anyone was upset with how the season went. I think this was a very entertaining, very good season, and just proof the expanded playoff was needed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree.
So, Pat, any closing thoughts from the past month in the 2024-2025 season?
Oh man, just kind of echoing what you said that I'm grateful that we had the expanded playoff. I think it worked the way it was supposed to. If you look at those semifinals that we recapped in the national championship, none of those teams would have made it if we were still in the 4-team system, right? Maybe Notre Dame sneaks in there, but I'm sure there would have been some noise about that if they had, because Clemson probably doesn't make it. So maybe Notre Dame sneaks in, but who knows, right? So it was great seeing that parity and seeing some names that haven't won a national title in a little bit, right? Even though Ohio State's been around, they hadn't won since 2015. So it was nice seeing that parity and seeing college football kind of trend back towards a more even playing field where it's not just the same 2 or 3 SEC teams every single year.
Yeah, no, it was, as much of a homer I can be about the SEC at times, this was quite refreshing. Not only just in the playoffs, but in the regular season as well.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of conferences ate themselves. And I think that the committee was probably also happy that we went to the playoff scheme that we did this season, because they would have been looking at it and going, okay, Oregon and who else?
Yeah, yeah.
Who's left? So, you know, great season. Great job by the powers that be to go to the expanded playoff. It was very needed. And yeah, I can only assume potential changes coming in the future. We don't know if that's this season, next season, or when. Um, I personally say we should just let this one fly and go as it goes, because
Mm-hmm.
everyone's like, oh, the Power Four is going to get the top 4 seeds automatically. Well,
You never
first
know.
season, Mountain West got it.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
exactly.
and then now that the Pac 7.5 is returning, I refuse to call it anything other than that, because there's only 7 football members, and
Yeah.
Gonzaga's there too. So Gonzaga's worth something. Um, you never know. I mean, with how the ACC is looking, it seems to be that Clemson and Florida State are looking for greener pastures, which is only going to equal the Pac-12 and the ACC even more.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's great to be a college football fan. I think this is one of the best sports that you can watch when it comes to parody wise. And my final note, as the Ohio State hater that I am, rather, you only won it after you lost to Michigan,
Right.
and you won the national title first. So there you go, Buckeye fans. If any of you are still listening to this point, you've already gotten a bit of hate as it goes. So this is our 2024-2025 recap from 626 Productions. We look forward to this upcoming season of college football. This was a great one. For Pat, I'm TJ. Thanks everyone for tuning in.